Thank you for joining us. I am Bill Murphy. I am your host with ASP, Quick Supply, Bowman Construction Supply, and Cascade Geosynthetics. And I am our civil engineer, and I'll get into a little bit about our company. So the four companies I've mentioned a few times, we do have now over 12,000 customers, over 30 sales professionals, one engineer, and all of our companies have a lot of experience. Let's see if I can click on this and keep it going. We are in 12 states and more. So some of you have known us for a long time, and we can go to other places, but for the largest part, these are the areas we cover. The Midwest is ASP and Quick Supply, the Rocky Mountains, Bowman Construction Supply, over to the Pacific Northwest, Cascade Geosynthetics. We added Cascade Geos last year. We do a lot more than just stormwater management and vegetated solutions. We do a lot of erosion control and sediment control. We have a lot of hardscapes in the way of patios and retaining walls and outdoor living. And our geosynthetics division keeps us going every day. So we have trucks and warehouses full of rolled products that have our erosion control products, TRMs, geosynthetics and geogrids, our BMPs. We help with a lot of SWIP maintenance and compliance. So there's a whole lot of things that we offer. And one of the things we're blessed with, and I took the slide out for some reason, is our warehouse staff and our trucking. We have a fleet of trucks, large and small, that can deliver a vast variety of projects to your site when you need it. That makes us a one-stop shop for a lot of contractors. So we have all of our local companies that you know that you could reach out to. I'm available for any of these companies, any of our states. And with that, I'm going to read the intro for our guest speaker today. Rachel Higgins is with us from Profile Products. She's CPESC and CESSWI. She's the Mountain States Market Development Manager for Profile Products. She consults with engineers and project managers to design innovative erosion control and vegetation solutions. She provides technical product information and recommendations utilizing their PS Cubed software that she'll talk about. She reviews soil tests with clients to determine if and what adjustments are needed to create optimal conditions for sustainable establishment. And she'll do a great job of explaining that to you today. She has her bachelor's degree in agricultural and biological engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a concentration in soil and water sciences. And with that, Rachel, if you unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you.
All right, well, great. Thanks so much, Bill. My name is Rachel Higgins. I'm a market development manager with Profile. And thank you, everybody, for listening in today. And again, happy St. Patrick's Day. I think it's pretty fitting that you guys are listening to a webinar with Profile Products today, because we are a proud green technology company. And, you know, our purpose as a company is to protect the environment and to improve the places that we live, work, and play. So by providing superior, sustainable solutions that manage soil and water, support vegetation, and provide productivity to our customers. All right, and so a little bit more background about Profile if you aren't as familiar. We are the world's largest manufacturer of hydraulically applied erosion control products. And our corporate office is up near Chicago, Illinois, and we have manufacturing facilities throughout the US, but we also have a global focus. So certainly working on projects all around the world. And in order to do that, you know, we've got a lot of great people on our team from different backgrounds that help us come together and develop these unique solutions. But something else we're really proud of is that we are an industry leader in research and development. So we're constantly testing and trying to improve our materials, as well as improving standardization efforts within our industry. And, you know, our motto, solutions for your environment, you know, a green technology. So being a major recycler is important. And through the past couple of years, we have recycled over 3.5 billion pounds of wood and paper by removing it from the waste stream and returning it to the natural environment. So needless to say, our environmental legacy is very important to us, not only our technologies, but us as a company. We were the proud recipient of the SEAL Award, Sustainability, Environmental Achievement, and Leadership, by doing things with advancements in our technology, as well as educational outreach. So again, thank you all so much for your time today, and hopefully you find this information helpful. And so at Profile, we work in a few different green technology areas. Our main focus and what we'll be reviewing today is erosion and vegetation solutions. However, we do develop solutions for the sports fields, Profile. We have a golf team, as well as landscape and horticulture. But like I said, today we're really going to be focusing on erosion and vegetation solutions. Now, I'm hoping that everyone here today is pretty well versed in hydroseeding, but just to make sure, just in case you've got somebody who aren't as familiar, let's make sure we're all on the same page. So when I'm talking about hydroseeding, we're talking about a mixture of our seed, fertilizer, soil amendments, and hydromulch, which can be mixed into a slurry with this machine we see on our right, a hydroseeder, that can then be hydraulically applied to the soil. So this hydraulic slurry can be applied with a wide range of equipment suited for different size projects. And this is an extremely effective way to stabilize your soil and successfully vegetate your project with one application. So today I'm going to go through our 5 fundamental process. And this is essentially our best management practice for reclaiming erosion projects. So first, creating optimal soil conditions. Second, picking appropriate plant species for your site. Then selecting the correct erosion control material. Number 4, ensuring proper installation. And then 5, follow-up inspection and maintenance. So today I'm really going to hone in on 1 and 3, but I will say all 5 of these fundamentals are extremely important, but I want to make sure to stay within the hour so you guys can go get your shamrock shake or pick up your green beer yet today. So with that, we'll get rolling. So if any of you have seen a presentation from Profile before, this should look pretty familiar. But you know, one of the questions I really like to start with is, what's the most cost-effective form of erosion control? I'm hoping you guys are jumping up and down out of your seats at home, but the answer we're really looking for here is sustainable vegetation. And this is vegetation once it's been established, it's able to persist through nutrient cycling. And in order to do that, we're going to need healthy soil. So I did say, you know, Profile, we're a manufacturer of erosion control products. So why am I talking about soil health? Well, really, you know, we've determined that the most cost-effective form of long-term erosion control is going to be sustainable vegetation. And with that long goal, that's the minimal cost, low maintenance solution. And we need that healthy vegetation with nutrient cycling. We're going to have diverse species, prolific roots that's keeping the sediment in place. But we can't achieve those unless we start with healthy soil as our foundation. This is necessary in order to support that vegetation establishment and allow that vegetation to come back season after season. So we know that this is the foundation, but how can you tell if your soil is healthy? You know, can you grab a handful and see the nutrients or pH? Unfortunately, we can't. So, you know, the first thing we're always going to recommend on any sort of reclamation project is getting a soil test. And that really takes us into our first fundamental, which is creating optimal soil conditions. So as you previously saw, we need to make sure that we have healthy soil to support that vegetation and long-term goal. By doing the soil test, we can evaluate our soil fertility. Because by a soil test, I'm talking about agronomic potential, not geotechnical stability. Because we want this agronomic potential so we can figure out if and what amendments are necessary to improve that soil health. And by doing this soil test, we can diagnose any potential issues and prescribe solutions for that specific site. This is a really great way to set up realistic expectations, see if there's anything that's going to be a hindrance on the front end, and predict your desired outcome. And at Profile, we understand how critical this is to the success of your site that we actually provide free soil testing for reclamation projects. And that's going to be done through PS Cubed, our Profile Soil Solution software. So I mentioned, you know, we're doing an agronomic soil test. So what do we need to look at? So here we can see some of the general parameters that we typically like to review from a soil test. So, you know, our water, salts, pH, our macro and micronutrients, as well as any potential heavy metals or toxicities. And then organic matter is going to be a really key parameter that I stress a little bit on here today. Also, taking a look at our soil texture. So our breakdown of sand, silt, and clay. This is a key indicator for our cation exchange capacity, as well as erodibility. So certainly something to keep in mind. But like I said, we provide free soil testing through our PS Cubed software. Here's just a quick example of what that looks like. As you can see, it's a pretty robust analysis going through all those parameters that I previously shared. Goes pretty well in depth. We do all of our testing through a third-party laboratory. They upload the results directly to your account, but along with providing results, we also provide prescriptive recommendations as well. So depending on the range that your parameters fall in, we can then prescribe soil neutralizers. So if we need to modify that pH, or growth stimulants, biotic soil media, these are going to be determined on the salt levels and organic matter in your soil. But here we can really see how we can use this soil test to review our site and then prescribe specific solutions to improve our vegetation outcome. But also with those results, it's not very helpful if you don't know what you're looking at. So we do have a soil testing and interpretation guide linked with all of the results. It goes through our testing methodology and gives you a little bit more background on what you're reviewing. Or if you have any questions, call me. That's my job. I'd be more than happy to review these results with you and see what we can do to improve the potential outcome for our sites. But just to kind of generalize it, I know this is an eye chart, but what we can do with these tested results is here we can see all these parameters and some optimal ranges. So these are all cited from the USDA and NRCS for turf species. Now, realistically, depending on where we're at or what we're trying to establish, these optimal ranges may need to be modified. But this is a great starting point in terms of general interpretation of your soil test results. And it'll give you an idea if there's anything that could be of concern or could hinder future vegetation establishment. So first fundamental, getting that soil test, went ahead and submitted that, you get it back and you see that we're kind of lacking some nutrients. So how do you actually go about fixing poor soil? So here, are the pretty common solutions, incorporating a starter fertilizer with your hydraulic slurry, soil neutralizers when necessary, increasing organic matter. As you'll see soon, this is a key component of healthy soil. So that's a pretty common approach, as well as incorporating growth stimulants and enhancers. So I do want to take a quick minute and touch on pH, because whenever I get a soil test back, the first two things that my eyes go to is going to be the pH and organic matter. pH especially because it can sometimes be a silent killer out on your job. Second to moisture, this is going to have the biggest impact in nutrient availability to your vegetation. So with pH, we typically want to be within a 6.3 to 7.3 range, because this is really where your nutrients are going to be most available for uptake. But as we skew more acidic or more alkaline, we can see here that some of those nutrients are going to become less and less available. Another way of thinking about it, if you look on the chart to the right, let's say we get our soil test and it's coming in a little acidic at 5.5. If you look at those percentages to the right, with a pH of 5.5, only 67% of nutrients are going to be available for uptake to your plants, or 33% are simply not going to be available because of the pH. So think of buying all this fertilizer and just dumping 33% away because it's going to be wasted. So whatever you can do to modify that pH when you're seeding, that's going to have huge impacts to your vegetation establishment. And then the other parameter I said I always look at is going to be our organic matter. And that's because what we see here is our ideal soil profile. And if we look in the middle, this is kind of the breakdown of that composition. So we have our mineral content, air and water, just like all living things. And we strive for 5% organic matter. And with this organic matter, that's going to help facilitate this nutrient cycling process, which is necessary to support that sustainable vegetation. So we can see that's typically what we're going to achieve in this rich O&A horizon, making up the topsoil layer. Whereas the further down in the soil profile we get into our B and C horizon, we're probably not going to have any organic matter. We're not going to have as high nutrient value, and it's not going to be as great as a growing platform for our vegetation. But up in this O&A horizon, this is our, this is what we strive for. 5% organic matter, where we have our nutrient cycling and carbon sequestration. And this is what we start every job with, right? Absolutely not. Unfortunately, almost all construction sites, that topsoil layer is the first thing stripped away. It's stripped away, sent off to another job, potentially stockpiled if there's room, or it was never there to begin with. So when we're wrapping up a job and we're getting to the seeding component of the spec, what we're left with is commonly our B and C horizon. By doing that soil test, we see that our organic matter is more times than not well below 1%. And we're dealing with, it's pretty common to see high salt levels. Depending on the type of job, we could be dealing with mine waste, industrial waste, or CCRs. So overall, not nearly as nice of a starting position as the profile we saw in the previous slide, right? So, if this is our starting point, we did that soil test, we see our organic matter is low, how do we increase it? So these are the pretty common industry solutions right now, most commonly topsoil and compost. Hauling in this material to your site and spreading or incorporating it is a pretty common practice to increase your organic matter. But with that, it can be pretty difficult to find quality material or, something that within your budget. It can be too far away, unavailable. So it kind of led to two typical solutions we were seeing. So if there's no quality material or too costly, we were seeing people just using the existing subsoil and hoping for the best, or a term that I've heard quite frequently is the spray and pray approach. It's got a nice ring to it, but it doesn't necessarily give you the best results, right? It's going to be one of the primary causes of project failures. Or the other option was they would have to take a hit to the budget and haul in and spread the topsoil or compost, which was, pretty common, but a crazy solution if, you're having to spend all that extra money to raise your organic matter. So seeing these common issues or common approaches within our industry, that's what led Profile to the development of a hydraulically applied biotic soil media. So this hydraulically applied solution is designed as an alternative to compost or topsoil, which is designed to jumpstart the soil's biological activity in depleted soils. So using our standard hydroseeder that we saw earlier in this presentation, we can now use that for erosion control and also increasing our organic matter. So given the nature of this application, it's going to reduce site traffic and improve site safety, dramatically reduce installation times, and is much easier and safer to apply on slopes. And since the launch of this technology, we have proven performance qualitatively and quantitatively, improving vegetation establishment equal or better to incorporated compost and imported topsoil. So, the product we manufacture is Proganix Biotic Soil Media. And so this is a concentrated formula since it is hydraulically applied. And how we have this concentrated high organic matter is through the renewable thermally refined bark and wood fibers. So these fibers are phytosanitized, provide very high organic matter, and you lose the risk or potential of incorporating weed seeds or pathogens as it goes under this high heat process. From there, it is loaded up with soil building components. So our porous ceramics, biochar, beneficial bacteria, endomycorrhiza, humic acid, seaweed extract, these all work together to help rebuild your soil profile. And also we do have a polysaccharide biopolymer, which helps with the shootability, as this is a hydraulically applied solution. So like I said, a very concentrated formula since it is, hydraulically applied. So kind of think of it as spraying the fertility of a topsoil just without the sand, silt, and clay. So this Proganix can then interact with the existing, sand, silt, and clay on the current substrate. So once it's been applied, it's going to then improve the soil chemistry. So over time, that's helping improve the structure and texture with that increased organic matter from the wood and bark fibers. And also with the soil building components, it's going to help create a more ideal growing platform for that vegetation to take off and allow that subsequent nutrient cycling process. So essentially over time, by applying this type of technology, it's providing the soil with all the ingredients, if you will, to really jumpstart this process and rebuild your topsoil layer in place over time. But certainly one of the great benefits with this technology is that it is manufactured to a specification. So it comes prepackaged in bales, just like our hydraulically applied erosion control products, but you're gonna have a consistent product, bale after bale, 365. That's certainly one of the concerns with some of the other options within our industry, but this is a consistent solution. Break it up into your hydroseeder, incorporate your fertilizer, seed, or other amendments, mix up this slurry and spray it out onto your site. I will mention though that this is considered a soil amendment, so we still need to make sure that we're protecting it with some form of erosion control. And we have tested this and it is compatible with hydraulically applied products, rolled blankets, blown straw, or even sod. So, there are certainly a lot of considerations to regenerate your soils. Like I said, probably the industry leading solutions right now are topsoil and compost, and they certainly still do have a place within our industry. But I would just like to stress, the next job you have, you're struggling to establish vegetation, our organic matter is low, consider Proganix Biotic soil media as an alternative to really start rebuilding that soil. Like I said, it's a consistent product, easy and safe to apply on steep slopes, and no concerns with bringing in outside weed seeds or pathogens. And also, this has been a newer technology within our industry, but it's certainly being accepted by a wide range of DOTs and other specifying agencies. For example, ASTM International just revised their topsoil specification, so really revamped the requirements for what's necessary of a quality topsoil. And ideally, even Profile would recommend organically rich topsoil, but there simply isn't enough available. So in this spec, they actually introduce a hydraulically applied engineered soil amendment as an alternative to topsoil, because they recognize quality topsoil is a limited resource. So when we don't have that, an engineered soil amendment is a great alternative. And with that, with the requirements they specify, Proganix BSM does in fact meet that spec. So first fundamental, really making sure that we're doing that soil test and doing what we can to create optimal soil conditions. So fundamental number 2, picking the right plant species. So there's quite a few considerations when it comes to picking your plant species. Is it permanent, temporary? When is our installation going to occur? The intended application, site characteristics, maintenance, our soil test, what seed mix is going to be suitable to the potential high salts or pH range. There's quite a few considerations that you need to look into when you're picking an appropriate seed mix. And the reason I say that is, some pretty common mistakes that we see from our perspective is a lot of times your seed mix may not be adapted to your site conditions, or it's not balanced. So there's not any species diversity. You can potentially have too much seed, or you could have too much cover crop. And of course, seasonality. So this probably doesn't sound too new to you, but even though we're not going to stress too much time on this fundamental today, it is really important that you do select a seed mix that is going to be well adapted to your site and your intentions. And so at Profile, we always like to recommend going with your local distributors or seed suppliers and asking them for their recommendations. NRCS and DOTs and other specifying agencies also provide great references for seed mixes. So always keep that in mind and keep good records of performance, and that's certainly going to help you out on projects down the line. Because again, as we can see in this picture here, you can have the right mix, but if you have the wrong ratio, your temporary, your cover crop can, fully get established and actually shade out your permanent vegetation before it can become established. And then when that happens, you're going to have to go reseed anyway. So certainly don't overlook this second fundamental. It's really critical to that success. And then, lastly, seasonality of installation. Even though I'm looking out my window right now in Denver and I see a bunch of, snow on the ground, the first day of spring is this weekend. So make sure that you're going with the appropriate mix for your time of installation. All right, so fundamental number 3, selecting the right erosion control material. So when it comes to selecting an appropriate erosion control BMP, we like to think of it as finding a way to balance your site's natural variables and your product attributes. So by natural variables, what I'm really talking about is, your soil, water, and vegetation. We could have potentially tried to improve our soil, but the vegetation, what's going to thrive in that area, and water's more about precipitation for that region unless we're irrigating. So we need to make sure that the erosion control BMP can complement those site constraints and provide adequate protection. So erosion control effectiveness is key, making sure it can withstand the potential erosion. Functional longevity is very important and commonly overlooked. This really references how long is this product designed to provide protection. So for hydraulically applied erosion control products, how long is this designed to protect the seed and soil before that seed can really take off? So certainly a major component when it comes to dormant applications, as well as native seeding, as those typically take quite a bit longer to germinate. And then last but not least, growth establishment. I said at the beginning, our most cost-effective form of erosion control is sustainable vegetation. So we want to make sure that the erosion control BMPs we're installing are going to encourage that vegetation establishment instead of hindering it. So really, that's why we feel that hydraulically applied erosion control products are a great option for your site. They can be customized to site-specific conditions. There are a wide range of products available in the marketplace with different compositions that provide a range of performance, so they can be customized to your site-specific needs. In terms of installation, minimal labor is required, and it's an economical way to control erosion and establish vegetation. And then, of course, they're safe for the environment. Certainly in years past, the industry standard was, blankets and rolling those out. While it was all good intentions, sometimes in certain areas we can see that some of the netting and staples still remain today. While they certainly still do have a place and there have been advancements in those technologies, that's certainly not an issue that we need to worry about with HECPs. We've tested these through ASTM and EPA. They're 100% biodegradable, encourage that vegetation, and safe for the environment. So a little bit more about HECPs, kind of think of them as spray-on blankets. Once they are applied to that substrate, they're going to bond with the soil and essentially lock in that seed and soil until that vegetation can germinate. And then we have that long-term solution with the root entanglement in the soil. Inherently, with how they are applied, hydraulically applied, they're mixed with water as they're sprayed out. So once it is applied to the soil, you're kind of like spraying out a sponge onto the soil. It's going to maintain that moisture to help with germination and then protect against future rainfall impact, but then it can also retain that future moisture. So really creating a great growing environment for that seed to really take off. And like I said, HECPs versus RECPs, rolled erosion control blankets, advancements within the erosion control technologies have made netting less and less relevant for today's environment. Unfortunately, I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of pictures like this. But blankets certainly do have their place. They're ideal for channelized application where you need that reinforced protection. So, as a company with our environmental legacy, we do, suggest if you are using RECPs, try and make an effort to use that biodegradable netting. But in terms of erosion control selection, it's really important that our HECPs can protect against the potential erosion on our site. But how do we figure that out? So how we calculate potential soil loss is through the revised universal soil loss equation, or the RUSL. So with this, we can calculate potential soil loss per unit area per unit time. Now I can hear you guys all yawning at home, so I'll keep it short. But essentially what this equation is calculating, it's really taking into consideration that triangle we saw previously. So R rainfall factor. It's based on your geographic region. K factor is based on your soil texture and organic matter. L and S based on slope length and steepness, so really affected by the design. But in terms of an erosion control solution, where we can really come in and make a big impact in your potential erosion, is our C, our cover factor, and our P, our practice factor. So this C factor, this is calculated as the soil loss ratio of a treated surface versus an untreated surface. And we do that through testing all of our materials through rigorous rainfall testing. And then just to mention that P factor, that's related to how your soil surface is prepped. Actually by cat tracking your slopes or leaving them rough graded actually reduces potential erosion as opposed to the more labor intensive smooth grading. So simply the way that you're prepping the soil makes an impact as well. But back to C factor, like I said, we calculate this through rainfall testing. So here we can see, testing can and should be very destructive. So in these pictures here, we see some test plots down at the Texas Transportation Institute, and you can clearly see that rainfall impact, and we can see the erosion on these test beds. While this is not what we want to see in the field by any means, under controlled settings in these laboratories, this is really what we're trying to achieve. We want to test all of our materials to failure, so that way we know what their limitations are, and then we can better provide recommendations for how they would then perform out in the field. And in order to do that, we really like using the Utah Water Research Laboratory, and that's because they can create the largest raindrop. So, the bigger the raindrop, the higher the kinetic energy and the more destruction that we're going to see. So certainly keep that in mind when you're reviewing products, because not all labs can create the same kind of rain, but really we want to use a rigorous lab to, again, test these products to failure so then we can differentiate their performance. And so, from all this testing, we can then calculate what their C factor is. And again, this is related to a control. So in that Russell equation, all those parameters are multiplied by each other. So taking us back to algebra, then the smaller the C factor, the better, right? So a smaller C factor, so what we see in this top row, 0.01 relates to 99% erosion control effectiveness. So another way to kind of look at it is if we plugged all these factors back into that equation, keeping everything else consistent, we can see the distinct differences in potential soil loss per year. So a C factor of 0.1, 90% effective. By college grading, that's still an A. But if we look at the potential soil loss, it increases tenfold from the 99% effective material. So really, keep in mind those changes in C factors have a really large impact in potential soil loss on your site. But again, by doing all this testing, that's how we're able to then differentiate products and determine what they can then withstand out in the field. So here's a performance profile. We can see, at the bottom of the profile, so relatively flat, not expecting much erosion. That's typically when you're going to go in with a straw or base mulch. But as we're dealing with more potential erosion or steeper slopes, we certainly need to supply a higher performing material. So common sense, but how we really determine that is through that rigorous rainfall testing. And so the highest performing mulch that's available in the industry is Flexterra High Performance Flexible Growth Medium, or Flexterra HPFGM. Flexterra is composed of thermally refined wood fibers, wetting agents, including a polysaccharide-based tackifier. It's got crimped interlocking fibers, which really, once it's all applied, it helps it all lock together and protect your seed and soil. It's designed for slopes steeper than 1-to-1. It's greater than 99% effective at controlling erosion, and it has a functional longevity up to 18 months. So really the ideal solution for dormant seeding or those really high potential erosion sites, or when we're trying to establish natives, which again take quite a bit longer to germinate. So you need that longer protection. Also, vegetation establishment. Those thermally refined wood fibers hold a lot of moisture, which really helps relate to the vegetation establishment increase by 800% compared to a control. And also cure time of 0 to 2 hours, which essentially means it's going to perform as expected immediately upon application. So this is really the high-end, kind of top-notch erosion control solution for those really difficult sites. So in areas where we're really struggling to keep the sediment there, this is going to be your solution. So again, ideal for those steep slopes. We use it quite frequently on vertical walls and those really, really difficult areas. Could you imagine spraying or blowing straw? You know, it's not really going to stick there, right? So we need to have an engineered material that's going to bond to the soil. So now here I've got a couple examples. Just want to say thanks to Steve with Quick Supply for sharing these. So here's a great example of when to use Flexterra. So this was the Lost Island Water Park in Waterloo, Iowa. 20 acres. We've got some steep slopes and long uninterrupted areas. So we know that slope length and steepness plays into potential erosion. So this was a great opportunity to utilize Flexterra to lock everything in place to kind of create this vegetated mountain, which will then act as the long-term erosion control solution. Here we've got another opportunity here. So this was the Decorah Airport in Iowa. So this was a helipad, and as we can see from this video, there is quite a bit of prop dust and wind erosion from this helicopter. So obviously something needed to be done here to help stabilize this soil. So for this area, let me get on to the next one. So for this area, they sprayed the entire area with Flexterra HPFGM. And until that vegetation could establish, it could also act as a dust suppressant. So, it's not, just the go-between until that grass takes off. It really is going to be effective, in that growing period. So here they sprayed the entire area with Flex. And then after it was installed, here's another video. As we can hear,
I'm sorry, I had no idea that was going to be so loud.
Sorry about that. Hopefully we didn't deafen anybody.
That's awesome.
We kept everybody awake, my apologies. But as we can see in this video here, we're not seeing those plumes of sediment anymore, right? So that Flexterra is really locking everything in place until that vegetation can take off. And again, I apologize for your eardrums. But here we are with another follow-up picture with we've got all this vegetation fully established out on this site. So really for those highly erosive sites, Flexterra is a great solution there. So thanks again, Steve, for sharing these pictures.
And that was Bill's fault for making it loud. I didn't check the audio. Sorry about that.
Well, hopefully.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, hopefully everybody's still with us.
Yeah, well, I'll take the complaints. I am the complaint department too. And just for a time check, we're at 1:11, and we'll see how much time we have for Q&As. You're doing great, Rachel. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And I'll try and speed up here. Just really wanted to stress Flexterra is a great solution, but there's certainly some other options. When we don't have as much expected erosion potential, go further down the profile, there's some other great solutions. So we don't always need to go in with the Cadillac solution, but it certainly doesn't hurt to provide that adequate protection. But with so many products to choose from, that can make it a little difficult to make that selection. So I do want to reference erosioncontrolspecs.com. This is a great website to develop your own specifications, as well as compare performance properties of other materials to make sure that you're going to have adequate protection. And I don't know if any of these products caught your eye, but you'll notice in the erosion control section, we have a product called Proganix Dual. And what this is, it is different than our Proganix BSM. But after the launch of that material, we had a lot of great success with building the soil with Proganix BSM. But we also got quite a bit of feedback from contractors and people utilizing this two-step application that they love it, but it could be better, and they'd prefer it if they could get it all in a one-step application. So that's really the intent with Proganix Dual. It's a combination of the soil building properties of Proganix BSM up to the erosion potential of a bonded fiber matrix or ProMatrix that you saw in the previous slide. So similar to Proganix, it's going to help with the development of your soil health, but also protect against up to moderate erosion control potential. So certainly has limitations. So we don't really want to use it on slopes steeper than 2 to 1. But overall, it's great for areas where we have limited access and efficiency is going to be paramount to getting this site completed. So again, reducing the number of tank loads, it simplifies complex projects with the number of different products that need to be on your site, and your application rates can be adjusted for different conditions. So in order to make that selection, you are going to be basing it off of organic matter as well as your slope gradient, because again, we're incorporating the soil building component and the erosion control potential. So you will notice that those rates are quite a bit higher than normal, but it's again, we need to have enough material to do both of those processes in one application. So for example, here was a site down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This was a site that had been seeded a handful of times already, but they didn't have anything established. So first thing we did was collect that soil sample, right? We wanted to do that soil sample. We saw that the organic matter was well below 5%. And given the moderate slopes here, we figured this would be a great opportunity for dual. So May 1st, 2019, going out and spraying this site. And then here we are at the end of the month. We've got our thick stand of vegetation. We can see from this shot here in the middle, the contractor was pretty pleased with the results. So, with this one-step application, we have time savings, but we certainly aren't sacrificing the results. So think of Proganix Dual as a potential time-saving solution, but do keep in mind, it's not a one-all be-all. It certainly has its own limitations. We don't want to use it on slopes steeper than 2 to 1, and for those substrates with extremely degraded conditions that aren't going to be suitable for that veg establishment. So in those situations, reverting back to the standard of the two-step application. So one, Proganix BSM, and then capped with Flexterra. That's certainly going to be the better option. But like I said, in those mild scenarios, Proganix Dual is a potential great time saver for that installation. All right, so we're going to fly through these last two fundamentals. And like I said, I've got plenty of information and could talk all day about these. So please reach out with any other questions. But for proper installation, you can have all the right materials, but if they aren't installed or mixed appropriately, they will not perform as intended. So proper installation is critical. So having that experience is, that's going to be the best option there. So please reach out, anyone with the ASP family or profile would be happy to help there. And there's quite a few tools to help ensure that you are having an appropriate mix and everything there. Like I said, we do have some tools to kind of help in visual guidelines here that assist with appropriate application rates, as well as stressing the importance of spraying from 2 different directions. We want to make sure that we've got full coverage and we aren't having what we see as a shadowing effect, what you see on the right. Because if we are rough grading, we need to make sure that we're covering both sides of those cleat marks. So quite a few considerations with proper installation. Please reach out. There's more than enough resources to help ensure that everything's being installed correctly. And then last, the 5th fundamental is follow-up inspection and maintenance. You can have all the right tools and have everything go together, but unfortunately, we can't control the weather yet. So making sure that inspections are happening by qualified professionals who know what to look for and that they're happening within appropriate intervals or after significant rain events. We really want to kind of catch any potential problems before they can grow. So for example, here was a site, a 50-year storm event hit right after application. So obviously we've got some concerns. So they knew that they needed to go out and repair this site before more damage was done. Returning to the site, there were a few things overlooked. There was no perimeter control, no slope interruption devices. We had some compaction there in the middle. So certainly regrading and taking a better approach here to achieve the sustainable vegetation. So here's some reapplication of the site to then achieve that long-term goal of sustainable vegetation. So, we certainly want to avoid this whenever possible, but when necessary, make sure that you are going out and inspecting, these areas and addressing any small issues before they do escalate. So all in all, that's kind of a quick summary of our 5 fundamentals. Like I said, I mentioned profileps3.com earlier. If you aren't familiar with the website, please jot it down. This was created to kind of mimic our 5 fundamental process. This is where we facilitate that soil testing. This is where we have design tools and calculators to help with that installation, as well as a document library with all of our product literature. So this is a great tool, and I'll work with Bill to make sure that this link gets sent out afterwards. Really, really recommend checking this website out. And then I am just going to click through these real quick.
Well, you have time, actually. Rachel, I'm going to chime in. I like your idea. I'm going to make a note to include the link, because I know you have the link there.
Yeah.
I'll include the link to the PS3 in our SurveyMonkey summary email that we're going to send out to every attendee. And then you have time. I don't see any Q&As, and that's how I want attendees to ask questions, but you must have done a great job. Why don't you fill out the rest of the time with your case studies, because they're really good. So you have 10 minutes left.
Excellent. All right. I'll slow down the talking then. Thanks.
No, you did great.
And
I like the idea of sharing this PS3, because that's a really helpful tool, especially for engineers, designers, even contractors are using it. So it's free to use. There's no obligation, and there's no obligation to contact us or you to talk about their project. So
exactly. And I've been with Profile for over 4 years now. I'm new to the market development role. However, my first 4 years at Profile, I was on the technical services team. So I certainly recognize some names. I know I've spent some time drafting certification letters or helping with soil tests. So I am very, very familiar with this website. This was my, main job responsibility. So if you have any questions, want to set up a one-on-one walkthrough, I would be more than happy to do that with you. It's a great way to kind of set yourself up for success, do that soil test, and simply, taking that step really helps set you apart from a lot of other people. They see that the work that you're doing on the front end to ensure that you have that, successful result in the end. So really, this website is designed to help you. So yeah, certainly recommend registering. And again, I could talk about this website for another hour, but I am gonna go in and show you guys a couple of case studies and see if that sparks any questions.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. All right, so I've got 2 case studies for us here today. This first one is up in Wisconsin, so the Racine Harbor. Looking at an aerial shot, I think we can all see we got a little bit of a sediment issue here. All of this sediment flowing right into the beautiful Great Lake, Michigan. So certainly needed to make some improvements further upstream. In this particular area, we're looking at Concordia University. This is a bluff stabilization project. So the university, just north of Milwaukee, up in Mequon, it's set right up on these beautiful bluffs along the lake. One of the bluffs, they had some geotechnical issues. They had a slip that then needed to be stabilized. So following that, they wanted to completely, reclaim this area. So they've got these walk paths along the water body, and of course, they needed to stop all the sediment going into Lake Michigan. So first thing we did, drum roll please, is a soil test, right? So we did that soil test, saw that the organic matter was pretty low. So this was a great opportunity for Proganix Biotic soil media. As you could see in that previous picture or in this next one, we're dealing with some pretty steep slopes. And again, remember, if we're trying to spread topsoil or compost, you can actually increase erosivity by doing that. So this hydraulically applied solution was much easier, faster, safer installation to improve our soil health. So they applied Proganix all over these slopes. And after they finished the installation of the BSM layer, given the steepness of the slopes and the location of the water body, and the fact that they were going to be seeding with natives, they capped this entire area with Flexterra HPF GM. So first doing that process with the Proganix BSM, and then completely protecting and capping these slopes with the high performance flexible growth medium. So this was the first phase of the project. And coming back a year later, we've got the thick, full establishment of native vegetation. So they were really pleased with how quickly this vegetation was able to take off. And then we went back out the following year for the final phase in May 2018. That same process, Proganix BSM, followed by capping with Flexterra HPFGM. So here we can see from that same vantage point, we've got everything protected with the Proganix and Flex. And then following up later that summer, and all the vegetation had fully taken off and they had complete coverage. I actually got to go with to kind of do a follow-up inspection on this site, and one of the contractors was so pleased, but he jokingly said, you know, it took off too quick. We actually have to mow it, you know, before we get into the, the winter months. So, certainly had that really quick green, but also sustainable vegetation. So here we went the next year just to ensuring that everything was sustainable and protecting sediment from Lake Michigan. And then the last case study I wanted to touch on, so this is out in northwestern Nebraska. This was a project with the Nebraska DOT out in District 8. Common sources of organic matter can be seen on this screen. However, they didn't have enough. We needed to come in with another solution here because we did a soil test. So out in this arid region, organic matter is pretty low. So we did that soil test, came up with a prescriptive solution here for the roadways, and deemed this was going to be another good opportunity for Proganix. So this particular site, or this particular project, like I said, northwestern Nebraska, right along the roadways, about 25 miles that they needed to reclaim. So from that soil test, they knew that they needed to kind of increase that soil health to encourage that vegetation establishment. So they prescribed BSM and applied that at the amended rates. You can see how quick and easy it is to apply in these applications. A lot of transportation, increasing safety. The machine gets in and out of there pretty quick, and it's pretty quick, easy spraying job in these type of scenarios. But also, as you're going along down the road, since this is a manufactured material, you also have benefits with staging material along the project. So, dropping it off at certain miles down the road, which helps speed up the process to allow you to just keep going and reclaiming those areas. And just again, for reference, mixing this Proganix up in the hydroseeder, and we see we've got this rich brown slurry here on the bottom left. So installation was August 23rd. They were able to cover all 25 miles in just a couple days. This was the contractor's first time with this application and was pretty pleased with how easy it was to mix and shoot. So again, just wrapping up these roadside shoulders. And then here we are, October 10th. For these particular areas, they weren't expecting much erosion, and just given the location and materials they had on hand, the erosion control protection they went with was blown straw that was then crimped into those roadside ditches. So again, Proganix is compatible with a wide range of BMPs. So here we are then, the areas near the waterway, those sensitive areas covered with a blanket, again, compatible with Proganix. But then returning to the site less than a year later, all the native seeds that they seeded are thriving. So really thrilled with how quickly everything could get established. And I feel like this picture is really telling because you can actually see there's a pretty clear distinction of the bright green to the left. So those roadside shoulders that were, seeded with Proganix compared to the other areas that were already seeded. So we can kind of see this clear line and how, quickly and healthy this vegetation has been established with the aid of Proganix just 10 months after install. So just to kind of wrap things up, by fundamentals, all of them are very important, and we find that following this approach sets us up for success and is a really great practice to integrate on your project. So doing that soil test, really reviewing our plant species and erosion control selection, and ensuring proper installation. So again, PS Cubed is a great resource to follow this. And with that, just want to say thank you guys all again for your time today, and really appreciate you listening in.
Thank you, Rachel. That was perfect. Perfect timing and everything. I'm absolutely digging it. I hope I could do more of these with you.
Good, me too.
There's Rachel's contact information there, and please contact her, contact us if you want to do this type of a presentation with your office. I really like the idea of doing it with an open mic where you can ask questions during live. No one used the Q&A today, which is kind of odd, but I think it's also because it's St. Patrick's Day, but also because you did an excellent job. You kept us engaged, and other than me with the audio error on the video, you made no mistakes at all. So I think it was an awesome presentation.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, and so everybody, it's pretty easy to Google companies. You can get the contact info. Thank you for joining us today. I do have an open date next week. That's a little bit on purpose. Had a conflict on our schedule. And for those who stay with us regularly, we do stay with the same time always and forever, but I'm making an exception in 2 weeks. I am going to be a chaplain at a friend's funeral, so I had to move the Wednesday, March 31st webinar presentation to earlier in the morning. That'll be 10 to 11 Central. That's the only one that'll be different than our normal 12:30 to 1:30 Central time. So I really encourage you guys to contact Rachel with any questions you have, or use the Survey Monkey for us to let us know what projects you have that you're interested in. And Rachel, let's go back. I'm going to put your contact information up there. But how simple is it? You already said this, for someone to get a soil sample. Just talk us through a real world, somebody has a project. How do they get a soil sample?
Yeah, certainly. So if you've got a site where you need to get some soil samples sent in, first thing, you just got to register on PS Cubed and create a project. And then one of the questions in there, it's real difficult. It's, would you like a soil test? All you got to do is select yes. And basically that's going to generate a soil test form for you. That's going to give you the sampling instructions, how much soil we need, how deep should you go, and then you're going to mail it to the address on the top of that form. Like I said, we use a third-party laboratory for all of our testing. This is not a profile analysis. We use a third-party lab in Lincoln, Nebraska. Mail it off there. As soon as they receive it, they're very quick. It takes them 3 to 5 business days to fully process the analysis and upload it right back to your project. So as soon as it's completed, you'll get an email notification and you're good to go. So if you overnight ship it, you could have your results within the week.
Awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. So thank you, Rachel. With that, we're right at the 1 hour. So I'll end the presentation, and Rachel will keep you in the loop on all the feedback we get from the Survey Monkeys. Thank you.
All right.
Happy
Great.
St.
Thank you so
Patrick's
much.
Day.